Hey guys, Scott from therecordingsolution.com. Welcome to the third part of my EQ series. The first video we went over the controls of a parametric EQ. So if you are just starting EQ and you don't even know what the knobs mean, for instance, all these guys, go back and watch the first video. And then the second video we talked about subtractive EQ, taking away things, taking away unwanted frequencies to reveal the good things, the good frequencies. And this video I want to talk about additive EQ. So once you've taken away what doesn't need to be there, if you see here's a cut, a subtractive EQ move, here's a cut. Additive EQ is more for enhancing, more for enhancing what is left, what subtractive EQ revealed and left behind. All the good things were left behind that you wanted. Now we can just kind of massage the good things that are left and maybe make them poke out just a little bit more to add character. You can completely go crazy and sculpt and shape sounds with EQ, and there's room for that. But most of the time you're going to just kind of enhance what's already there with a little bit of additive EQ. So for example, here is the snare. Let me get it back to a verse. Let's solo that snare. Okay, so I'm gonna kick on and off this orange EQ move right here, and then you're gonna hear what it's doing. It's very subtle, but just listen for like fullness. When I kick it off, it's gonna go away. When I turn it back on, you're gonna get a little bit more fatter of a snare. So check this out. So it's on right now. You're gonna see it disappear when I turn it off. So it just made the snare fatter, warmer, a little bit wider and beefier. So that's all I wanted to do there. And the way I found that is I just kind of narrowed this EQ curve. I just swept around until I found a good sweet spot in that snare. Now that's a little bit too much. I just wanted to find it, and then I will bring it back down to a more conservative amount of a boost. Now, some guidelines, these are not set in concrete rules, but typically what I've learned is when you're boosting, when you're doing EQ boost, you want to make the EQ curve, they call it the Q, which makes it wider or narrow. When boosting, you want to make it a little bit more wider because it's more natural to our ears. I don't know the science behind it, but it's just the way it is. So you kind of want to make it a little bit more wider, and you're affecting more of the frequencies around the actual 129.2 hertz that you have it set at. You're kind of affecting the frequencies below it and above it just a little bit, but that's okay. So here we go. And when you're subtracting, you can get away with more narrow of cuts. Just kind of some guidelines to things. So wider when you're boosting, you can get away with a little bit more narrow cuts. So let's play that again. So I just enhanced it a little bit. Nothing wrong with that. So that's an example on a snare. Let's look at this Wurlitzer over here. Let's play that. I'm gonna put it up the middle for now. I'm gonna loop it because it's kind of hard to. It's very subtle there. Where you hear it mainly is in the context of the mix. When I'm doing these EQ moves, I'm EQing with all the instruments in. I'm not soloing this Wurlitzer and making decisions by itself. I'm trying to do EQ moves, subtractive and additive, with all the tracks in context with the whole mix, so that I know that I'm making the proper EQ moves and I'm hearing everything while they're all stacked on top of each other. And here is a stereo plugin that makes my mix. It's on my master fader. It makes it mono. So this would be full stereo width, 100%, and then I click it to mono. So when I EQ, I like to mix or EQ in mono. I click that on, because if I click it off, you're gonna hear this. And then when I click the stereo width plugin on, it pops it in the middle. So listen for that Wurlitzer in the mix, and then I'm going to turn on and off this additive EQ move, and you're going to hear it. You're still going to be able to hear the Wurlitzer, but you're going to hear it pop out a little bit more in mono with the rest of the tracks playing. So you see how it's just your ears can find it a little more easier when you make that little subtle EQ move. And I'm not trying to be dramatic here. I'm trying to do small, subtle EQ moves to make things pop out a little bit more in the mix, and you can find it. So I can turn that off, the stereo width plugin off. It's very subtle, guys. Very subtle, but it does something to my ears, and it does something in context with the mix. So that's another example. And then I have a drum bus here that all my drums dump into, and I just added a little bit on the top end to enhance the cymbals and the hi-hat. So let's play it soloed. So again, very subtle, but in context with the mix, it adds something. So there you go. So that's additive EQ. You're just trying to enhance what's already there, what you have left behind once you've done subtractive EQ moves, like you see here with the high pass filter and this little high mid frequency subtractive EQ move. So I left behind the frequencies I liked, which is like right here at the top end. And so these are what is shining through. And if I liked this area a lot in this steel guitar track, I could just maybe massage it and boost it a little bit just to give it a little love. But you got to be careful that you're not boosting those same frequencies on this track, and then you're boosting those same frequencies on another track, and you're boosting those same frequencies on another track. That's where you can get into trouble with things called masking, EQ masking, where you're not supposed to have every track occupy the same frequencies in the spectrum here, 20 to 20K. So you're trying to find spots where every little track can sit in and live in its own little world, but live harmoniously in like a good neighbor. You're not fighting and conflict and covering each other up and fighting over spots and real estate. So that's what we're doing with subtractive and additive EQ, is just finding those little pockets and things we can manipulate to make them fit. So the next video I'm going to talk about more on that, and I call it complementary EQ, and you can just kind of get two tracks to work better with one another with doing certain moves. So we'll talk about that in the next video. Scott from therecordingsolution.com. See you on the other side.